Hey everybody, this is Heidi, and you're listening to the Successful Fashion Designer Podcast. We all know that the fashion industry is brutally competitive and it takes loads of hard work to get ahead. The problem is that everyone's secretive and tight-lipped about their ways. After working as a designer and educator for over a decade, I wanted to help break down those barriers and bring you valuable knowledge from industry experts, and this show is exactly where you'll find that. Whether you're trying to break into the fashion world, make yourself more marketable, launch your own label, or become a successful freelancer, we'll help you get ahead in the cutthroat fashion industry. This is episode 38 of the Successful Fashion Designer Podcast, and today I'm chatting with Stamatina Vasileris about the hard lessons she learned from launching her own collection to working for brands in New York City's garment district. If you missed last week's episode, this is in response to that, as well as the emails I sent out the week before. I'll link to all of that in the show notes. But Stamatina reached out to me in response to some emails I had put about the hard lessons I had learned in my fashion journey, and she had gone through a lot of the same things. She said she wished she had done a lot of things differently, and she wished she could share some advice with all the young designers out there. So I invited her on the show to share her story and to tell you guys what her thoughts are on ways she could have done things better and what she would have done differently, and her best advice. After investing over $20,000 of her own money into her collection of evening wear dresses, Stamatina learned the hard way how much time, cash, and work it took to get a brand off the ground. She made a lot of mistakes, from sourcing and fabrics to pricing and assortments. And as I mentioned earlier, she wants to make sure designers like you don't make the same mistakes. In this interview, she shares her best advice on doing your research and having transparent agreements with your suppliers, the importance of budgeting and not spreading yourself too thin, and why you can't afford, literally why you can't afford, to let yourself get in over your head.
You need to live your life, and you need to make those mistakes to become wiser. But you also, I think the most important thing is to know when to stop. Because for instance, if I kept going, charging my credit cards continuously, I would have been in so much debt that I probably would not know how to get out of.
Before we get started, I want to remind you, if you haven't yet checked out the Ultimate Guide to Being a Freelance Fashion Designer, I definitely suggest checking that out. It's one of the most recent resources I've released, and I've already been getting tons of emails and replies from you guys that designers are seeing results in negotiating their rates, landing new contracts, getting more clear on how to organize their portfolio. And if you haven't dug into this resource yet, it's definitely something you should do. It's over 20,000 words, and it's absolutely free, and it walks you through step-by-step of finding and reaching out clients, figuring out and negotiating your rates, and presenting yourself professionally. I'm so excited to share this amazing resource with you guys. Whether you're new to freelancing or you want to get started, and maybe you've been doing it for a while and you know there's always room to improve. Wherever you're at, check it out right now at sfdnetwork.com/freelance. As always, if you don't want to miss out on upcoming episodes, make sure to hit subscribe on iTunes or wherever you're listening. And if you enjoy the show, I'd be thrilled if you'd take 30 seconds to leave a review or rating on iTunes. It really helps out, and I appreciate it so much. You can do that at sfdnetwork.com/review. Now, on to the interview with Stamatina. To access the show notes for today's episode, visit sfdnetwork.com/38. Well, welcome, Stamatina, to the Successful Fashion Designer Podcast. I'm so excited to chat with you today. To start out, please tell everybody who you are and what your fashion background is.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Hi, Heidi. It's nice to speak to you again. It's been a long time. My name is Stamatina. I am a Greek American. Well, sorry, let me back that up. I was a fashion designer. I decided to stop designing from maybe 3 years ago now. And I used to design evening wear under my own name, Stamatina Couture. I did some casual wears, some accessories, some T-shirts. And currently I'm in Athens, Greece.
Okay. So. And beyond your own collection of evening wear, you also worked in the industry as an employee, right?
I did. I first started out in 2008 when I moved back to the States because I graduated from Athens, Greece. I moved back to the States. I went to the Carolinas, South. I was in South and North Carolina at the time. And I started my own fashion label. But then, with the economy and the crisis and everything that was going on at that time, I realized I was at the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong market. I eventually stopped and decided that, I think it was like around 2012 actually, that it would have been best for me to stop that and work for companies. And that's when I moved back to New York and I started working in the fashion industry. I worked as a fashion designer in a company, I won't mention the name. And of course, I was promised a raise within 6 months. I had no one to show me the system there, to show me their files. It was a mess, and I had to take over everything. So for anyone out there that has went from doing their own business to working for someone else, it's two different worlds.
Yeah.
Yeah. And here I was in a company where I had no one to show me anything, literally no one. I had to figure it out all by myself. And, I was promised a raise, so I was trying my best. If I didn't want to go to lunch or if I felt like I had so much work, I wanted to impress my boss, I would sit in my chair. I wouldn't move. I would continue working till he was happy.
Yeah.
But of course, that raise never came. Of course, that didn't come. And I would do things, like clean out the library, like the fabric library. He had a room where everything was categorized by the fabrics, by the prints, and I had to clean everything out. I mean, I did a lot. And then he would hire and fire other people, but he would keep me. And I would have to teach them as if I had worked for other companies prior to his. I don't know, I guess he felt like I was responsible enough to do all this. But when it came down to the pay for a raise, he pretty much kind of like laughed it off. And, and there was like a lot of flirting on his part, which made me feel extremely uncomfortable. I don't know if that's something you want to talk about, Heidi.
Honestly, we can talk about anything that you want. It's interesting. This whole conversation kind of spurred because you responded to some emails that I had sent out and you made some comments about, you went through some tough times with your own label and with working in the industry. Yeah. And you made some comments that you wanted to get some of this information and you even put it in quotes, so get some of the dirt out there and share the real experiences of what kind of goes on behind the scenes and to help educate other designers. So first of all, they know what they're getting into, and second of all,
of course,
maybe give them some advice on how they can do things differently so their road is maybe not so rocky. So I guess we could start a little bit more on, would it make sense to start a little bit more on a timeline? So you started your own collection first. So do you want to maybe talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's sure. So what happened with my collection is I was invited to be a part of the Charlotte Fashion Week, which was the first Fashion Week Charlotte ever did. And here I was, somebody who just graduated, and I was so excited. I was like, you know what? I want to take this opportunity. I get to show my work right away. I was told that there were going to be buyers there, probably like from Neiman Marcus and other stores like that. And I was super excited. Here I was designing like over 20 designs, evening wear, all silk, all Swarovski crystals, all handmade. I actually would travel from South Carolina at that time to my seamstress who was in Maryland. So I would travel a lot and often to go check up on the dresses, to go check up on my patterns and all of that. And some of them, when the models came, had to be adjusted. Well, I had to do the sourcing for the fabrics, the trims and all of it. I had no idea where I can find my products, the things in my material for cheap, because I was a newbie. I didn't know. So with that said, it's like I spend literally over 20,000 just on that collection, as if I was, I don't know, some huge designer. And I was just starting out. Make a long story short, the fashion show happened. Everybody loved the designs, but there were no buyers there. There was no one there. I mean, they were just, local celebrities. But what are you going to get out of that? When you do so much, you put so much, you expect something in return. Instead of just, clapping at the end of the show, you want your business to, roll, and you have this impression that, I'm going to have this show and things are going to go smooth and that's it. But it's not just that. You have to create your brand. You have to create your image. You have to do your website. You have to find your models. It's all time consuming. And if you don't have a team behind you to support you, you're a one-woman show. So you're eating, breathing, sleeping, thinking, fashion, designing, everything. It's all you. It's all you. You don't have a life. And that's the truth. Like, I didn't. I mean, my friends would go partying, go to clubs. I was sitting home, designing, trying to find things that, would get me one step closer to my dream, to making it happen. And so a lot of the times throughout those years, I was home and everybody else was living their life. Why? Because I would have rather spend my $100 or $5 or $10 on my dream and not living my life. And so, I mean, now that I look back, I still get a little excited thinking about it, because it's like it was a dream of mine. And sometimes I say that I'll still get back into it. But what I would like people to know is that my mistake was I started with really expensive materials. I had really unique, ideas. I wanted to reach the top right away. I didn't want to crawl. I wanted to run. And I think it's the truth, though, so I wanted that. And I thought it was possible. What I realized is I met a lot of people on the way, and they weren't who they were saying. For instance, I met a lot of people who would introduce themselves telling me that they are in the industry an X amount of years. 10 years later, they're saying how they're just in the industry 10 years, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So back then I had met this special lady. She was in PR, and she had told me, fake it till you make it. That kind of stuck to me because I wasn't that person. I couldn't fake it till I make it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't say, you know what, I've been in the industry for 10 years. Meanwhile, I was just starting off. But that's what the industry wants. That's what they want. It's unfortunate, but like in my experience, and I hate to admit it, but that's what the industry wants. They want you to either fake it till you make it. And let me tell you, this lady that's in PR, she's doing extremely well for herself. And I'm proud of her because she had it in her to do that. Unlike me, who I gave it up because I couldn't fake it till I made it.
But I think there's a difference between like faking it till you make it and just like flat out lying.
You think so? I don't know anymore. It's like when I look back now, I actually don't think that there's a difference, Heidi. I feel because also if you actually look at job requirements, they tell you that, we want like 5-year requirements, 5 years of designing or tech packaging but it's like, if I just got out of school, how do I have 5 years? You either want me to flat out lie to you or I'm not going to get the job, right?
Yeah, I mean, and just to be completely transparent, coming from my perspective, I would never advise anybody to lie on their resume like that.
No, I don't agree with it either. But that's, I don't agree with it.
Okay.
That's the reason why it's like a lot of things didn't work out for me. But what I'm trying to say is like, the image that the industry gives you is that you have to do that. I'm not saying that you should do it. I'm not agreeing with it, because if I was agreeing with it and if I was capable, I would have done it myself.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. But I mean, if we're going to speak honestly, it's like when you go and you look for jobs and you read their requirements, how does a person out of school find a job? Unless they do internship, and then they get lucky enough and that company hires them.
So, yeah, which I think is a path that a lot of people do go. I mean, okay, so to be completely transparent, yeah, a lot of people do have a really hard time finding a job and nothing works out. Or people get the internship and get their foot in the door and something does work out, or some other route happens, which could be a ton of other options, right?
Right, yes.
But yeah, speaking honestly, it's hard. It's very hard. And so, and we can talk a little bit more about that, but I want to go back to something you said a second ago. You said, you know, you wanted to get to the top right away, and you kind of like dove right in with really expensive fabrics and this collection. I think you said of like 20 dresses and...
Yeah, probably more than 20. I think it was more like 24 around there.
Okay. Yeah. And so you should have crawled, but instead you ran. So like, what would you have just scaled back the number of pieces and maybe skipped the fashion show and gone to do something else? Like, talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So if I had the money that I spent back then, I would have done less designs. I would have focused on just my extremely unique pieces that I felt would have grabbed their attention. And I would have looked for cheaper fabrics. First of all, people don't want to spend so much money on new designers, I feel. Like they would rather go give that X amount to Versace or Gucci or Fendi, or, you know what I mean? So my cost should have been way less. Yeah. So I would have looked, not only did I get expensive material, I got different kinds of material, meaning all sorts of silks. And I should have narrowed it down to maybe one or two colors. What I did was I did multiple different types of silks in different colors. Huge mistake. What the smart move would have been is less designs, cheaper fabrics, cheaper material, and get your point across. Simple. That's all. Because I was looking for that extravagant look, that evening wear. And today, if you could have gave me that money back to do it all over again, that's what I would do. I would go and find cheaper fabrics, cheaper trims, and do the same designs, possibly with a few little differences here and there, but not as expensive. Definitely not as expensive.
You know, it's really interesting because I love this point so much. I was listening to this other episode of a different podcast called Loose Threads, and these guys were telling this story about how when they were first launching their collection, they really, you know, they felt like they had to have this really specific color fabric, and so they bought the grayish, which is undyed fabric, and then they had it custom dyed in Brooklyn, and they were like schlepping bolts of fabric, riding city bikes, and when they look back at it in hindsight, they said, you know, we were not big enough to be spreading ourselves that thin. We were not ordering enough. We didn't have the demand. And so I think there's a time and place where you have to look at what you're putting out versus how much money you have to spend versus how much of a difference that perfect shade of red is going to make, and versus being smart and saying, okay, you know what, I'm not going to afford the custom buttons on this. I will use available buttons that are a lot more cost effective, and I will save costs here, and maybe, like you said, minimize the colors and minimize the different types of fabrics that you use across different styles. And I even find and still do that with brands I work with today that manufacture overseas, you know, 500 units per style. We're still really smart about and conscious and mindful about where are we going to use this fabric in multiple places. You can't always just get exactly what you want. Sometimes you have to compromise a little bit so that your resources go further. I mean, that's kind of what I took out of what you said.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. My point is that I didn't think like that back then. I was just thinking about getting my ideas out there, and I wasn't thinking about the money. Until, you know, you run dry eventually because it's expensive, especially if you want to keep your ideas just the way you imagine them and you don't want to like sacrifice a little bit and make a little adjustments to those ideas.
Yeah.
So yeah, my thing is if somebody's starting out today, I would say think before you spend. Think how you can make it cheaper. That's the best advice I think I would give to somebody today. Like, think of how you can make your idea cheaper, like the cost being as cheap as possible without, of course, the fabric falling apart. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But, don't spend like, I don't know, $50, $60 a yard either.
Yeah.
Try to keep it much lower than that because in the long run, it doesn't add up, and the profit is not as great.
Yeah. I mean, did you really think, like when you were first putting those designs together, did you think about profit margin in terms of like how much this dress is costing me and then how much can I really sell it for?
No, I didn't think about that. I just literally jumped in. I got so excited that there were going to be buyers there that I didn't have background in selling. So I didn't exactly know. All I knew is what it was costing me. And I figured like, okay, if it costs me this much, I was told that I need to price them like 2.5% up, like not 2.5% up, like double the price of my costing, in other words.
Right.
So, and still like the dresses, if I did that, they were coming out to over $2,000 a dress. And we're talking about a lot of money. And, again, a lot of people would tell me, if I'm going to spend that much money, I'd rather go give it to Gucci or go give it to, somebody else that's already known out there.
Yeah. So perhaps your price point was just, as you said earlier, a bit too high for people to invest in a new designer they've not heard of.
Yeah, of course, because my cost was high. So, of course, my prices were high. My seamstresses were expensive. My seamstress alone wanted like $500 a dress.
Yeah.
I didn't know back then to look and, do my research and find maybe somebody to pay per hour because it was a big project.
Yeah.
She was alone working on so many dresses. I should have probably had multiple seamstresses at the time.
Okay. And so I think it's just a matter of doing more research and being smarter about where you put your dollars.
Sure.
And also being mindful of the end price and what is your customer really willing to pay for your product versus, they'll spend $2,000 on a big name dress, but not someone that they just have heard of the first time.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
go ahead.
That is like my feedback. Like that's the feedback that I would get from people that I actually knew. That is exactly what they were telling me. So this is not something that I'm just like throwing out there. This is stuff that I was actually told. So I mean, I think it's something to keep in mind if you're out there and you want to start your own collection.
Yeah. And so you got a little starry-eyed with this fashion show, and then nothing really happened. And so, what did you do next, or what? Talk to us about what happened.
So after that, of course, I wasn't going to give up. Who gives up, right?
Yeah.
You have this dream, you want to fulfill it. You're like, you have to find. I'm the type of person I have to find ways to get where I want to go, either one way or another. So what I did next was like, okay, I was thinking to myself, if silks are so expensive and, my price was so high, maybe I need to go a different route, maybe more casual. So the next thing I did was I did a collection of casual wear, and I kept it all to one color, which was all black. And I went to Philadelphia where my pattern maker was. And I went, and my seamstresses were actually there as well. So I was having a lot of back and forth with Pennsylvania now, from the Carolinas to Pennsylvania. We did our photo shoot there. The collection was beautiful, in my opinion. I don't regret it. But again, my pattern maker was expensive. My seamstresses were not as expensive as the first ones, but my pattern maker at this point was expensive. And let's say she either made a mistake on the prototype, I was paying for her to fix the prototype. You know what I mean? Or if I missed a little information, in measurements or whatever, because she didn't have that missing information, I ended up paying for that missing information. So my advice, again, would be to be extremely careful with your numbers. Be more cautious when you're giving them to the pattern makers. I don't know how every other pattern maker is out there, but you need to be very specific when you are creating your own line with your measurements, and you need to have a good agreement with the pattern makers. With that said, again, my tops were like 300. And at this point, I realized that making clothing in the USA is expensive, period.
Okay, so I want to talk about a few things specifically that you just said.
Right.
Have a good agreement with your pattern maker. Like, what would that really look like?
Listen, in my experience, I was literally like, if I had missed even a single measurement, or if I wasn't clear enough for her, she would make it to as it was on paper, for instance. And if it was wrong in any way, if it was too short, or if it was too small, or if it needed to be taken in just a little bit, I would probably have to pay at least $75 for that change to be made. So what I'm trying to say is, like, speak to your pattern maker. You know, if, for God forbid, you know, you're missing a little detail or whatever it is, speak to her and tell her, you know what, please, before you charge me on anything, possibly, you know, give me a heads up. Maybe I can fix it before we produce it. And, you know, because I spend a lot of money on her as well. Yeah, I mean, a lot of money goes left and right when you don't know better.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
And so then you made the comment about, you know, producing in the U.S.
Yes.
was really pricey.
Yes.
But there's a balance, though, because when you go overseas, you have huge minimums. So, you know, what are your thoughts on that?
So my thoughts on that is that when you're starting out your line, realistically, you need to have financial backup. And by that, I mean, because I was also a fan of having everything made in the USA. But the truth is, Heidi, when you're making things in the USA, they're expensive. Like, I'm telling you, the powder maker was expensive, the seamstress was expensive. And when you are a new designer, you can't go to the factory and say, I want 300 pieces of this design, or I want 400 pieces of this design. So you're either going to sit down and make everything yourself, or you're going to have to find a team and work with them. Because unless you have the financial backup, because it's not, what I learned later on is that you need to be able to produce and produce and produce, meaning you need to have your collection, and then you need to make another collection and another collection. You can't just make one collection and think that you're going to be known and that's it. No, even if you don't sell a piece, you have to make your next collection continue with your ideas. And a lot of designers go through this. And even though they have so many followers on Instagram and on Facebook and on, you know, all social media apps, that doesn't mean that they're selling.
Yeah.
It just means, and I think a lot of, of the new designers, they have this false image that just because so-and-so has X amount of followers, that they must be banking it. And they're not, it's an image. And I guess that goes back to what I was saying in the beginning. So it's all about the way you handle yourself as well, and what you put out there for people to see. I mean, I know that I'm going a little off topic again, but one subject brings the other subject. So again, if you're starting out, I really feel that you either need to sit down and make everything yourself, or you need a team where everybody has something to win at the end of the day. Because if you do it the way I did it, it's going to cost a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, I literally left the industry because there was no way that I could keep just spending money and not getting anything in return.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was no way. And again, it's like I had this thing, I wanted my clothes to say made in USA. But I was paying a pretty penny for that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what do you think, Heidi? What do you think is like the right thing, if there is a right thing?
I mean, again, I think it's definitely wise to focus on starting small and crawling. And I think that one
Mm-hmm.
of the things that a lot of designers get stuck in is we get so excited about designing and developing the collection, and so we're creatives, and so we design, and then we put our money, whatever money that may be. For you said you put about 20,000 into your dresses, so you put that in, and then you forget about, okay, I actually have to go out and sell this, and how do I actually get people to buy this, whether that's buyers from the department stores or whether that's retail buyers. And by then you're trying to focus on selling, and it's already time to create another collection.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
I think there's some different models out there that can work a little bit better versus collections. You can look at item driven
Yeah.
assortments and focus on, one or two or three key pieces. And introduce those in just a new color next season. That way you're not redeveloping all your patterns.
Right.
So I think there's ways to do it,
Uh-huh.
without developing these huge collections. But I think one of the things that's really under emphasized and under discussed is how hard it is to actually sell the product.
It's extremely hard, I think,
Yeah,
because
talk about
not
that.
only, yeah, because, all right, so listen, you go from designing to picking out your fabrics to working with your seamstresses, your pattern makers. And let's say the show is over, it's done with, and all of a sudden, in my case, for instance, there were no buyers there. All right, fine. What do I do next? I start looking up all the boutiques in the area. I start looking up
Yeah.
all the boutiques in the 50 states just to make sure that they're selling evening wear. Maybe I need to send out my little catalog with all my styles to them and my prices to them, my wholesale prices. So here I am mailing out these things, mailing out everything, my brochures, everything, all about me, all about, I didn't hear back from anyone. I felt like maybe my brochures were still stuck in the post office somewhere because I did not hear back from anyone. And I was like, I can't believe this is happening. Then I would go to the Atlanta. There's a market in Atlanta. There's a show that they do every year, and they have like a bridal event and everything. I was part of that too. Nothing came from that either. So here I was, and I'm like, is it my designs? Is it my prices? But you know what? And then I thought to myself, I'm like, okay, so how about if somebody did come to me right now and told me that they wanted 300 dresses of this style? I would have to find a factory overseas, and I would have to see how quick and how fast they would have to, they could ship them over to me, make them, produce, and ship them over to me. So what I'm trying to say is that it's literally not as easy as it looks. It's not all about the glamour, because here you are designing and you think that that's probably your only responsibility, but it's really not. You have to be the designer. You have to be on top of the seamstresses, the pattern makers, the models, the photographers, the websites. You have to do your branding. You have to do everything. And you have to run out there and sell all your products. And what happens when you're stuck with inventory and you can't get rid of it? What happens?
It's a hard time.
It's extremely hard, because here you are and you're like, what do I do now? Do I give up? Do I keep going? And of course, this didn't work out. So I go a different route? And at this point, like, the money's getting lower. Like, your bank account is like going down, 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 down. And here you are charging credit cards now. That's why I really loved your email. I'm like, oh, this sounds so familiar to me. And that's the worst thing that you can do. But you know what? That's what happens when you believe in yourself and you have this dream and you believe in your dream so much, you get carried away. And sometimes you need a reality check. So after that, after I found myself charging my credit cards for my work, I was like, I got to stop. I really have to stop. And that's when I decided, you know what, this is it for me. This is where I draw the line. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And that's when I decided I was going to go to New York. So it's really hard. It's extremely hard, but I think it's possible. as long as you have the right team, like don't think that you're going to go out there and you can do it all by yourself. I think the best thing is to have a team behind you, a team that believes in your ideas. And, you know, if with respect and appreciation, you can go a long way.
Yeah.
That's what I think. And again, you need to be smart about your costs. You need to be smart about your fabrics, your ideas. And, you know, you don't have to design over 20 dresses or 20 shirts or 20 different pants. You can keep it to 5. You can keep it to like maybe 1 pants and do like 5 different tops.
Right.
You don't have to do what I did. My way was the wrong way completely. And it took me a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of stress until I realized it. And trust me, I didn't want to give up, but I didn't really have a choice either.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of things that I don't want to see new designers do because it's like I already know it's a mistake. And it hurts me to watch them. Like, it really hurts me to hear stories like the stories that I've been through. It's sad.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that you're putting it out there.
Well, thank you, and I'm glad that you're talking openly about it too. And I think that, you know, there's a way to do it right, and of course we're all still going to make mistakes. Sometimes 100 people could tell you something, and you still have to kind of learn it for yourself. You know, I think some of us can be, like you said, you believe in yourself, and you get so. You put on these rose-colored glasses for your dream, and
right.
it can be hard to listen to what other people say. It's very easy to convince yourself it's going to be different for you. I think we've all been guilty of that before, so that's okay.
Of course.
That happens. It's a learning process. You know, I always say, too, like, each thing that you do in life, whether it's a huge mistake or a huge failure or a huge success, you learn and you grow, and it leads to the next thing and it leads to the next thing. So you did your a couple collections, and then you said, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to go to New York and work in the industry. And so what did that look like for you?
Of course, in the beginning, I was thrilled. I'm like, this is where I want to be, back home, because I am from New York. So I was extremely thrilled to be back. At first, I was like, you know what? It's okay that nobody else is in the company as a designer. I felt like I was trusted and I was responsible enough, and I could have done it. But the industry is rough. Like, what I'm trying to say is, like, they just throw you in there and they expect you to know everything, especially maybe it was just the company that I ended up working for. But I had no idea. I had no idea what was expected of me at all. I handled it, I think, pretty well. And I think, yeah, because like it was my first job, like in the industry, working under someone else. And I felt really good. I mean, I got to the point where, you know, he would hire new girls, new designers, and I was the one teaching them. And I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. And, you know, and in 6 months, I'm going to get this raise, and like, it's okay. And, you know, even though at times there was a lot of tension because, you know, we would have to work on deadlines and all that. I was still okay with it. I mean, but then it got to the point where, like, he wanted me to go shop for his house, like curtains and things like that, because he was building a new house. And I'm like, wait a second. So sometimes in the fashion industry, you know, you have a job description, but the truth is you might be asked to do other things as well. And so I felt a little uncomfortable not because it was anything crazy, but it was like, okay, this is not my job description. But I figured that, you know what, this guy is trusting me with his credit card, so maybe it's a good thing, you know, and I'm going to get my raise in 6 months, so that's all good. But eventually, you know, you realize you're not getting that raise. And then, you know, just to be on the safe side, you ask for it and you still don't get it. Mm-hmm. But, you know, it's not bad working in the fashion industry, but you need to have a strong stomach. You really do, because, you know, your boss is going to say something to you. You're not going to like it. You know, you might have a little confrontation. You might not agree with his ways, because then I went to work for another company and I realized, and I don't know if you've had this experience or not, but I realized after a while that my boss didn't know how to sketch. So, for instance, he would tell me, I want this skirt a little longer with a little slant and blah, 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 blah. And I would do it the way he would want me to do it. And then he would come back and he'd be so mad at me. And he would be like, oh, no, I want it this way, and that way, and this way, and that way. And I'm like, okay, if you just changed your mind about your whole design, that's fine with me, but you don't have to yell. And what I'm trying to say is, like, sometimes you need to just put up with them if you want to keep your job. And that's the truth. Like, you need to be able to have a strong stomach, because the industry is rough. And they're not going to sit there and, clap at you. They're not going to, like, pat you on the back and tell you bravo or whatever. It's not like that. Because the job that you have and the job that, that's a job that a lot of other women want. And a lot of other men are looking forward to. So the truth is that even though you might be an amazing designer, you need to be able to communicate, and you need to be able to respect your boss. But if it does get out of hand, you need to be able to stand up for yourself as well. That's my personal experience in the fashion industry, as an employee.
Yeah.
And it's kind of rough when you have leadership skills in you to take orders, which is, for me, it was fine to take orders, but sometimes it was just like the way that they were thrown at me. So, I mean, you literally have to have a really strong stomach in this industry. You can't think that, they're just going to, like, be okay with everything. And I don't know.
Do you think
Have you had that?
What's that?
Have you had any experience like that?
Yeah, I mean, I worked in the industry as an employee for just a few years until I branched out and did my own thing, freelancing, which for me has been a much better setup.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was promised raises that I never got, and I was overloaded with work and asked to do, I never got asked to do any, like, personal errands, but,
yeah.
People were let go, and I inherited their job responsibilities, but didn't get any compensation or even a title,
Yes.
a title change from that, and
Mm-hmm.
you're working and working and working to the point of, like, genuine, like, mental and physical exhaustion.
Yes.
Even just talking about it, sometimes I think back and I'm like, I was in constant, like, frantic go mode.
Yes, exactly.
Your heart, like, never stops pounding. You just feel like a hot mess most of the time, and you're not
You are
sleeping.
a hot mess.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you want to do your job the best you can.
Yeah.
And even if you do, sometimes it's not good enough for them.
Mm-hmm.
So you keep pushing yourself. Like, I spent endless nights trying to figure out things on Illustrator, trying to make things more realistic, trying to make things even better. And still it wasn't good enough for them. So, expect that. Like, for anybody that's, like, out there listening, like, you don't think that you're not going to get that. That's just the way the bosses are. That's just the way the people on top are. They want you to always push yourself. They always want, like, a better results. That's what they always look for. And that's what I realized afterwards, that no matter how good you are, they're not going to tell you you're the best. They're going to tell you you could do this, you could do this, you could do this a little differently, a little better. Even if they themselves don't know that, how to do it, they're going to expect you to figure it out. That's my conclusion from my experience.
Yeah. And I think, to be totally transparent, there are good experiences out there. And now listen, anything in fashion is hard, period. You're going to work hard. It's a tough industry. I think there's various levels of challenges. I think it is leaning more towards really tough work environments than, other industries might have. I'm curious to know, like, is there anything you would have done differently during that time in your life in terms of whether it was how you handled working with that particular person or trying to find a different opportunity, or, like, looking back on that, what would you tell yourself?
With the companies that I worked for, to be quite honest with you, I have no regrets. Okay. I honestly, I feel like I did my best. And so therefore I have no regrets. The only thing now that when I think back, is I should have probably done freelancing. That is like the only thing I didn't do. And the only thing that, after reading your email, I was like, you know what? I didn't give that a try. And I'm like, maybe that's maybe that would have been the right direction for me.
Yeah.
Because like another thing that I realized, there were some days, especially in the second company that I went to, that he really had no work for me. And I was like, again, I was the only designer there. So he really had no work for me. And I'm like, why am I here? Like, there was nothing for me to do. So I think freelancing would have been the best option, even for this company. And I don't know why he wasn't looking for a freelancer himself.
Yeah.
So after reading, like, that's why I love keeping up with you, because it's like, you just like, I don't know, there's just things that you throw out there that remind me of what I've been through, or like how I could have done things differently if I ever want to get back into the game. But, it is what it is.
Well, I'm interested to know, because this is, and you don't have to give very much detail at all, but like, were these brands that you worked with in New York, would they be qualified as like, and glamorous might not be the right word, but let me rewind and kind of explain the direction I'm going. I've talked to other people who have found that, working with some, more quote unquote fun, really designy type of product tends to be a more competitive, more cutthroat, more abusive type of environment. Whereas you step back and you look at like doing, I mean, not to, I guess, like maybe like more boring stuff, like more everyday product,
right.
less glamorous, like more middle of America. Like those can be the brands that tend to treat you a little better. Like I've heard many people say that, and that's an experience I've had personally as well.
Okay. Well, the first company was fast fashion.
Okay.
Meaning, yeah. So it was a company that was doing different things very fast. It was like, you send the design straight to China, and within like 2-3 weeks, the shipment was in. You had to make sure the designs were right, the products, were all the way that you wanted them, and they were hung up so buyers can come in, see them, in order. The second company was a company that sells, I think, what is it, QVC?
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, and it was ladies wear. It was, casual, I'd say. So, again, if that helps, if that information helps at all.
I mean, I'm glad to hear you say that you don't regret it, though, because like we talked about earlier, each thing in life can be a stepping stone and a learning experience to the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened after your time in New York with those brands?
So what happened is I decided to go a totally different direction. I decided at this point I needed to try something different for myself and maybe lay off the fashion industry for a while. And I went to the beauty industry, which is something that I had previous experience with, because before becoming a fashion designer, I was a cosmetologist, and therefore I already knew about hair and makeup. But now I decided to take it to the next level and learn about permanent makeup, semi-permanent makeup, microblading, which is like a really hot trend. And, I got into the industry of cosmetic tattooing. And so in November, I went to Amsterdam to take a seminar, and currently I'm in Athens, Greece, and I'm looking to build my clientele here and see how life is here. So it's a totally different route, but at the end of the day, I still have fashion in the back of my mind, and how I can, take that eventually, not right now, down the road, and, put all my knowledge together and create something, unique.
Yeah. What do you think that might look like? Because you said in your email to me, I think I'll get back into it someday, but I don't know if it'll ever be as a quote unquote designer. Do you have any thoughts what you might want to explore?
I think that I would like to explore styling, because again, I know how much it takes to be a designer, and I don't know if I want to go down that road again.
Yeah.
I maybe just like me, maybe like put my 2 cents in a piece and make it a little more unique, but not to start something from scratch again. Like I think I wouldn't want to go that route. Maybe styling, and I really love changing people, making them look their best. So let's say I had a client and she trusts me with her overall look, like from head to toe. I can pretty much transform them, meaning their hair, their makeup, permanent makeup, styling, I mean, from head to toe.
Yeah.
So I love that. I love that idea that I can do that for someone because it makes them feel good. And not, at the end of the day, we all need to feel good about ourselves. And I think one of the best things in life is to make other people feel good too. So I'm happy, I mean, of course I would have been happy if I was this big fashion designer, but it didn't work out that way, and it's okay.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I'm fine with, I really believe that, everything happens for a reason, and we are all where we belong at the moment.
Yeah.
And we will get where we need to go as time passes.
Yeah. That's such a great attitude. And I think, as I kind of dug through my journey these past couple of weeks, and even though some of those times were really hard, just like some of the same stuff you went through, I don't regret any of them, and they were all learning experiences. So
we shouldn't. Regrets are a waste of time. It's good to learn from your mistakes.
Yes.
It's good to learn, but there's a difference between knowing you made a mistake and that you have regrets.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
I agree.
So I think you need to live your life, and you need to make those mistakes to become wiser. But you also, I think the most important thing is to know when to stop. I do. I really think, because for instance, if I kept going, charging my credit cards continuously, I would have been in so much debt that I probably would not know how to get out of. So I think that there comes a point where you need to realize and look around you and know like when to stop, and maybe not when to stop, but when to go a different route. Like for instance, if you're a fashion designer and you're trying this hard and it's not going anywhere, maybe you need to turn to styling, or maybe you need to turn to something else in the field, because it's not just designing. There's so much out there that you could do. And I think some of us are just stuck on that little piece. And, maybe we need to just look at all of our options and not just, have tunnel vision.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like in my case, today, I know how to design, and I know what it is to work in the industry. I know what it is to work, for myself. And here I am now in the beauty industry, and it's not that far off from fashion, So at the end of the day, again, I could probably take all my knowledge, put it towards one person, and change them completely. And it will, make them happy. Because again, as I said, you need to be happy, and your clients need to be happy. And I think that's so important.
Yeah. That's such great advice, because I just did an interview with a pattern maker and sample sewer, and he loves it. And, I think there's so many other things that go into fashion, and even like beauty, as you said, that aren't specifically designing. So there are other opportunities to still sort of work in the industry and use your creative, inspiration that doesn't specifically mean like making a garment from scratch and like creating it on that level. So
there's so many things you can do.
Yeah.
There's so many things. As long as you don't have tunnel vision, as long as you have an open mind. No, seriously, because I feel like looking back now, I feel like that's exactly what I had, tunnel vision. Like I wanted to get where I wanted to get. I believed that was another mistake. I was naive, and I believed a lot of the things people were just throwing at me. Like example, like the buyers were going to be there and they weren't there.
Yeah.
So, but you know what? It's not their fault. At the end of the day, I take responsibility for my own mistakes, and I learned from that. And now I know how to be a little wiser and to ask more questions and to have, to know my own value and know that, if I'm going to spend the next amount of money on something, I want to know that it's actually worth it, that I'm going to have a return. Like, when you're young and you're just getting out of school, you really, and they tell you this great story, you believe it, and it's normal to believe it, and it's great, and you feel amazing, and you just want to do the best you can. But reality is very different. So, again, you just take, the mistakes you made and you learn from them, and That's it. You need to have a positive attitude no matter what and keep going and keep going. And that's it. That's all that matters.
I think, you could parallel these sort of lessons to anything that we do in life.
Of course.
This is kind of life is just the whole learning process journey. Stamatina, this has been so much fun. Is there anywhere people can connect with you online? Do you have a website or maybe LinkedIn or Instagram?
I have everything. So I have Instagram, and it's Tama Beautify, TamaBeautifIed. They could also find me on Instagram under Brooklyn Beauty. And social media, I have Facebook as well. It's under my name, Stamatina, Stamatina. Last name Vassilaras, V as in Victor, Assilaras.
Awesome. And I will link to all of that in the show notes. And I'll close out with the question I ask everybody at the end of the interview. And I know you're not technically in the fashion-specific industry at the moment, but the question is, what is something no one ever asked you about working in fashion that you wish they did?
The reality of it.
Yeah.
The reality. Exactly. That's why I love this. That's why I was like, when you said to talk, let's talk. I was like right on it, because nobody speaks about the truth about the fashion industry. And there's so much more that we can actually talk about. But, everybody needs to live it a little bit on their own and, take the experience and the lessons. But the reality, it's like, what's really going on in this industry? Because, they see the glitz and the glam and they're like, oh, this is fabulous. This is amazing. I want to be a part of it. But nobody, unless you're in it and behind the scenes, you don't know the stress, the sweat, the time, and everything that goes on behind it. So, that's it. The reality.
Yeah.
That's all.
Which is great, because that's just what we spent the last hour talking about. So I love it.
And I'm really happy that I got to speak to you again.
Yeah.
So, it was really nice to catch up with you.
Yeah, you as well, Stamatina. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and good luck with everything in Greece. And look forward to seeing, how your journey continues to develop.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much, and good luck to everybody out there that's listening. And be positive. Do as much as you can for yourself. Be happy and stay healthy. That's the number one advice. Stay healthy no matter what. Mental health, physical health, everything. Just be happy.
Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate each and every one of you. Make sure to hit subscribe on iTunes or wherever you're listening. And if you enjoyed the episode, I'd be really, really appreciative if you took 30 seconds to leave a rating or review. You can do that at sfdnetwork.com/review. And before I leave you, I'll remind you to check out the Ultimate Guide to Being a Freelance Fashion Designer. It's over 20,000 words, it's absolutely free, and it walks you through step-by-step how to find and reach out to clients to get work, how to figure out and negotiate your rate so you get paid a fair wage, and how to present yourself and your portfolio professionally. I'm so excited that so many designers have already shared success stories, like getting new clients or getting a more fair wage with existing clients, using the exact strategies I put into this guide. So whether you're new to freelancing and want to get started, or even if you've been doing it for a little while and there's always room to improve and a few more clients or a little bit better rate wouldn't hurt, check it out now at sfdnetwork.com/freelance. Again, it's absolutely free. Last, if you'd like to learn more about any of the resources mentioned in this episode, visit the show notes at sfdnetwork.com/38. Thanks again for listening, you guys. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I will talk to you next week.